All right, well, hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Anthony, and today we're going to be discussing the Citizen Skyhawk. But more specifically, we're going to be doing a little bit of a tutorial today, actually, about the Skyhawk here. This here is actually the Blue Angels edition of this watch, but this tutorial really is applicable to any Skyhawk out there in the market. This is a great watch. I've had this watch for about 2 years now, and it's definitely served me well. It has a lot of great features in it, but of course with a lot of great features can come a bit of a learning curve. I know one guy I spoke to once even said this watch almost killed him, and while I do think that is a bit of a gross exaggeration, it does go to show that it will take some time to sort of learn this watch. So today that's really what we're going to be doing. Finally, just know that I am not a professional by any means in this field or by Citizen at all. I'm just an amateur. I noticed there isn't a whole lot of information out there for people to choose from on how to operate this watch. I know Citizen has some stuff out there, but it doesn't really dive too much in depth. So today we're going to do the best we can to kind of give a little more explanation as to what's out there. So do bear with me. Again, I'm not a professional by any stretch of the imagination. So that said, without further ado, let's go ahead, let's get started. Okay, so first things first, I guess we should probably go over the hardware here. Okay, so I'm going to use my little pointer tool here. First here, I'm going to just zoom in a hair. You can see that we have the rotating bezel. Very nice. Up here at the 12 o'clock area, we have the Zulu time, or the universal time. Very nice for pilots to have. You cannot change any sort of setting. That's just UTC. You can't do anything with that. That's just automatically there and set. Next down here we have the 24-hour hand, basically just telling you what time of the day you're on. Next down here we have our secondary time there, and all sorts of features that are associated with this window. This is actually a very critical window to the operation of the watch. We'll discuss that more as we go along. Next up in the 6 o'clock position, we have all the different modes that this watch can have. We'll discuss those further down the line. We keep going over. Here we have the time zone that is displayed on the main dial here. So whatever time zone is listed in this window here, that's what you're going to see on the main dial. And then finally over here we have our power information. Now this window basically, because it's a solar powered watch, it basically is going to tell you how much power the watch currently has. You can see it's fully charged right now. And then also you can see here it says Japan, China, Europe, or USA, and that has to do with when we go to acquire a signal, it will tell us where the signal came from, and there you can see it's pointing to USA. Also, over here you'll notice we have the buttons and crowns, and so we have an up button, we have a down button, we have a 3-position crown, which of course, obviously, the 3 positions are in, intermediate, and out. Okay, and we'll obviously be using those as we go along. So with that said, we're going to start here with the different modes that this watch will offer you. In order to select the mode, we have to put it to the intermediate position. We click the crown out, one click to the intermediate position, and you'll see that the mode selector hand is now rotating. Okay, so we're going to rotate it to timer first. Okay, I'm going to push it in. And the timer is entirely operated through this main window display here. Okay, and all that we have to do is pull the crown out all the way, and you can twist the crown to the time that you like, and then push it all the way in. You'll note that you cannot, unfortunately, you cannot set the timer in minutes or in increments of seconds. You can only set it in increments of minutes, and you can set the timer up to 99 minutes in as little as 1 minute. Okay. Once you've set the time in that you want, top button starts it, top button also stops it, and the bottom button resets it. It's very straightforward. Also, once you start the watch, if you want to come down here and reset it, it will reset and continuously recycle. But again, otherwise you stop and reset. Pretty straightforward, just like any other timer. The next function that we're going to cover is the chronograph. Okay, and again, very straightforward, very simple. Pull the crown out to the intermediate position again, and we're going to twist up the mode selector to the chronograph option there. Going to push that in, and again, top button starts it, top button stops it, bottom button resets it. You also do have a split time option where you can hit the bottom button, the clock will continue to run in the background, and you can log that time then. And then you just continue to split it, and then you can finally stop it and reset it. Again, chronograph, very straightforward. The next thing we're going to cover here is the alarms. Okay, we have two alarms on here. Okay. Now both alarms work identically. So again, we put the crown to the middle position, point it to one of the alarms that you want to use, and then push the crown in. Now here, you'll notice something when we go to set this. We're going to pull the crown out all the way, and we're going to start by turning the alarm on or off. So let's just say we want the alarm on, and then we push the top button to cycle to the next position. So now we're going to turn to the time zone that we want, and I'm going to just say we want the New York City time zone or Eastern time, and then we can cycle to the next one by pushing the top button, and we'll set the hour that we want. Push the top button again and set the minute that we want, and push the top button again, and then it brings you back to the original starting position. And then there you go. That's it. That's setting the time or the alarm. Very straightforward, very simple. Couldn't be any easier than that. Now let's start diving into some more of the murky stuff in the way of setting the time. Now, when it comes to setting the time, there are two ways that we can do that. We can set the time manually, and we can set the time automatically. And when it's auto set, when the time automatically gets set, it's basically where the watch will connect via radio wave, basically through a radio connection to an antenna, a series of antennas throughout the world, and it'll automatically acquire the time. It'll take like 20 minutes. It'll uplink the time to the watch, and then the watch will display the correct time. For the first part of this video, for this portion, we're going to solely be talking about the manual setting of the watch. In other words, turning the crown, pushing the buttons, making the watch show the time that we want it to. Okay, that is going to be our first thing to explain in this portion of the video. So forget about the manual or the automatic mode for now. Okay. Once you're ready to set the time, you're going to just again verify that the time mode is selected. And first, you're going to leave the crown, you put the crown in the intermediate position. Okay, you've selected time and leave the crown in the intermediate position. And what you're going to do is you're going to use the top and bottom buttons to select the time zone that you would like to set. Okay, so I would like the main display to have New York City time, and I would like the inner display here to have Chicago time or Central time. Okay, that's what I'd like to see today. So again, I use in the intermediate position here, I use the top and bottom buttons to display New York. Then I push both of them at the same time, and you'll notice that those two flip-flopped. Okay, so Quebec City time that was initially over here, which is actually the same time zone as New York City, it swapped. Okay, and then I can also take this time to select Chicago time. Okay, so first I want to set New York City time. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to, again, click both of these. You'll notice that now it moves back. 1 hour for Chicago time. Now this main display is showing Chicago time, and New York City time is displayed in here. Okay. And so now that I have New York City time in there, I can go ahead and pull the crown out all the way. All right. Now, the first thing that's going to start flashing as soon as you pull the crown out all the way, it's going to go to the second hand's going to go to the 12 o'clock position, and you're going to see an option for, do you want daylight savings time to be on now, yes or no? And so right now it's the winter, so I could select it on or off. It's the winter, I'm going to keep it off. Okay, and then I click the top button, and it's going to bring me to seconds mode. Okay, and so I can reset the seconds whenever I'm ready for that. Click the top button, and then it brings you to minutes mode. Okay, and I'm going to, we'll just set the minutes hand to the proper time there. Just click the top button again, and you can select the hours to the time that you want, and again, the top button again. Here it's going to ask you, would you like 24-hour mode or 12-hour mode, and I like military time, so I'm going to keep it on 24-hour mode. One last time, and it brings you back to the start. Now, I go ahead. If we now want to show New York City out here on the main dial, again, intermediate position on the crown, push both buttons at the same time, and it'll swap them. Okay, and you can, while it's in the intermediate position on time mode, flop these buttons up and down for all the different time zones. I think there are like 44 options, 44 different cities that you can select in here that essentially equate to all time zones on Earth. Plus several extras, of course. And so that's basically how you manually set the time. Okay, next up is setting the calendar. Okay, super easy again. So we take the middle crown here, intermediate position, select calendar mode, and you'll see that it shows the calendar in here. Okay, so first thing, when we go to set the calendar, is we pull it to the intermediate position. And just like we did with the time, we select up and down until the time zone in our little box here is shown. Now I like to keep it in New York City time zone, so I'm just going to leave it there as is. And then we can go ahead and pull the crown all the way out. And just like we did before, we're using the bottom button. I'm sorry, we're using the crown. We're using the crown to change the month. Top button to switch to the next thing. The crown again to change the date. Top button, and then the year can be changed again using the crown, and then it restarts. And that's pretty much it. That is setting the date for you. Okay. Now we're kind of reaching the final parts here of our little tutorial. And the last two parts are the transceiver mode, aka the modes that help the watch automatically get set, and the world mode, or the WTS mode here. Or not mode, it's not really a mode, it's just sort of a setting option that we can adjust with both of these here. All right. So first we're gonna go over WTS. Okay. You should be able to set whatever you set in here, you're going to set it one time, and then you're just going to forget about it because there's really no need to worry about it. Okay. So we go to WTS, and we'll pull the crown out all the way. Okay. And there's two things that we actually, three things that we can set in here. First is, do we want to keep we can use the crown. I should first mention that we twist the crown to select the time zone that we wish to affect, or the city that we wish to affect. And we can first start off, it's first going to blink for daylight savings time. Do we want daylight savings time to be on or off for that city? Now this is designed to be like a quick set for daylight savings time. I'm not going to lie to you. I think that this is somewhat of a useless function here. Reason being is because, and I normally always leave this off, because when we go to manually set the time or automatically set the time, whatever we have set in manual or automatic mode will override whatever it is that we put in here. Okay, so if I say, yes, I want daylight savings time to be on right now, it's the midsummer, I want daylight savings time on, but then I go into manual time setting mode, and I tell it, hey, I would like daylight savings time to be off, it's going to force this mode on this option in this screen in this setting area off. So it's kind of silly that this is even here. I don't really get the point of it. If anyone out there does know the point of it, I'm all ears, but I have yet to learn anything on that front. The next thing that this does, this is a neat feature, is you'll notice it says set or off. Now, what this is let's say I turn it off, okay? I use the Eastern time zone. Quebec City is in the same time zone as New York City, okay? So if I turn this off, what it'll happen, I'm going to deviate away from this page for a second. If I go to, say, time, and I start to cycle through the city options, you'll notice Quebec City is no longer listed, okay? And that's all that does, is it basically helps declutter the cities that you are less likely to use, okay? So I'll cycle back to Quebec City. Pardon. There it is. And I can then select that back on if I like. So basically it just helps declutter. If you're using a city less, or you never use a city like Quebec City, you can turn it off so it just doesn't show up in the options when you're setting the time. It just sort of helps declutter everything. Okay, thus it's a set it and forget it type thing. Okay. So the last thing that you can set in this area here is what we call home time. Now, most people likely will not have to use this function, okay? But what you'll do is from this menu, with the crown pulled all the way out, you'll twist the crown until it says HOM, and then you will hit the top button until it shows these dashes. And basically, in 15-minute increments, you can set a time plus or minus UTC time, okay? And basically, so if you live in a part of the world that isn't following the normal minutes, because like I said, most time zones in the world do follow do follow the same minutes, but the hours are the only things to change between time zones. There are just a few time zones that do in fact have slight minute increments between them. Okay, so you know, if you live in a part that is an hour and 45 minutes off of UTC time, or basically the time at the prime meridian, you can set that here, and that's all home mode does. I don't really use it, to be perfectly honest with you, although I do know there are places in the world that have that. I've never been. I couldn't even point one out to you on a map. Okay, I'm sure there's somewhere out in Oceania that's like that, but in any case, that's what that is, and that's where you can set that. Most people likely will not have to use that, and so that's all that is. Otherwise, yeah, every other city that's offered in here is only going to offer you those two things to set in this little mode setting here. Okay. All right, and the last thing that we're really going to touch on is the I guess we'll call it the transceiver, the radio that allows you to connect and automatically update the time. So move the crown to the middle position like we have been doing, and you can rotate this whichever way you like out to RXS and push it in. So we'll go ahead, we'll pull out the crown all the way, and here you'll notice AU is flashing. If we push the bottom button, MA is flashing, and so that's auto or manual. And what that is daylight savings time, the famous daylight savings time. If you recall, when we first went to set the watch manually, the first thing that came to our attention was, do you want to set the watch daylight savings time on or off? Okay, well, in the second option of setting the watch, it needs to know, do you want to manually have it or automatically have it know that, okay, it's daylight savings time, so at 2 in the morning on November 1st, we're going to bring the clock back an hour. Okay? In the springtime, are we going to automatically have it go forward an hour? Okay? And it should know the date that it has to do that per the antenna that is sending it the signal, so they change the date, which they often do. In any case, that is what that does. So I leave that in auto because, yeah, I live in an area that offers daylight, or that does daylight savings time. So it needs to be able to automatically adjust that time at 2 in the morning. Okay. Next up, auto. Okay, it's going to show flash auto, and you'll notice the different options I have are auto, manual, or off. Okay, and what this is basically asking you, all this is asking you is, do you want it to automatically acquire the time at 2, 3, and 4 in the morning? Okay, which I do, so I leave it there. If I selected manual, though, it would automatically acquire the time at 2 and 3 in the morning. However, at 4 in the morning, I can actually, that's an adjustable time that I can adjust by the hour. So I'll use the crown here, and maybe I want it to actually be set at 5, and so I can, instead of selecting auto, I can select manual and then leave it at that page, and then push the crown all the way in. But in fact, I actually don't like doing that. I like it in auto mode. And so then that brings you to the last option, of course. Maybe you don't want it to automatically acquire the time for whatever reason. So you might just leave that off. And then, of course, we can cycle it back to auto mode again, which I leave it in anyway. Okay. Now, with that being said, when it goes to automatically acquire the time, you must make sure that the watch is either in RxS, time, or calendar mode. You'll notice those are highlighted. Okay, and it has to be in one of those modes in order for it to automatically acquire the time. But let's say, and while it's in those modes, you'll see it also gives you some light for the top button. And in the bottom button, it offers you an option to basically see where the last one was set, or what antenna was used for the last setting, and whether it acquired a signal. In this case, it did not. Okay. Okay, so now I want it to go ahead and acquire the time automatically. It is not currently set to the right time. So what we're going to do now is, in order to force it to automatically get the time, we're going to take this bottom button here. We're just going to click and we're going to hold it. Okay, and you're going to see that a few things. You're going to see again, this is going to point to the USA. It's going to go straight up and it's going to start showing radio controlled and run. Now I'm just going to sort of have to intermittently pause this stuff here because it takes about 10 minutes to acquire a signal. Okay. Now if it can't acquire a signal, it's going to basically show no up here, and it's just going to go back to the original time that was previously required or previously set. Here you can see it pointed to M. Okay, you'll see H, M, and L. Pardon, I'm looking through the screen here. H, M, and L, meaning it's either got a high signal, a medium signal, or a low signal. And then over here, you'll see that it says no. That just says, no, we couldn't get a signal, sorry. It's not uncommon for this watch to sometimes struggle to get a signal, depending on the weather, depending on where you live. It does cover most, essentially all of the continental United States, but even then, so if you're in a building with a lot of metal, if you're in an area that has just a lot of radio signals going through it, living near a radio station, that could interrupt this watch from getting the signal. I know one time I was having a hard time getting the signal, and I went to the middle of a Walmart parking lot, and it was able to get one. All right, so I tried to catch it as it went to basically switch the time back, but basically all it does is, once it properly acquires the time, if it does get the time, it just shows OK here, and then the hands will wind. Unfortunately, I couldn't turn the camera on quick enough. Otherwise, yeah, it'll just, if it doesn't acquire the time, it'll show a no there, and then it'll go back, like I said, to what the time would have been had you never initiated the process. Because it does continue, like I said, to count the time when it is acquiring a signal. As you can see, though, here, the time now, it now matches. It now matches. I'm going to tell you right now, the seconds hand on this one is off a bit. That is much more accurate on the one that you see in front of you here. So the best way that we can then verify that, in fact, the time the signal was also acquired, let's say, you're sleeping at 2 or 3 or 4 in the morning. So you want to verify, hey, last night, did we get a signal? Push this bottom button here, and it'll show you it did on high on US, okay, or Europe, or whichever one that you got it off of. Okay. And then after so many seconds, it goes back to the time. So that's acquiring the signal. That's pretty much everything that you need to know about the Skyhawk Series watch. I hope that this tutorial helped you to some avail. And again, if there's any further questions or comments or issues, please do not hesitate to leave them in the comments section. And if any of you guys have anything further to add, or if I said something wrong, please again call me out. That said, hope everyone enjoys it, hope it helps, and we'll see you around.